Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for coming on this lovely morning in front of the Department of Energy. My name is Jan Mueller. I'm the Executive Director of the Association for the Study of Peak Oil and Gas, ASPO-USA. And we are an organization dedicated to advancing truth in energy. And by that we mean that we believe that reliable information and clear and complete understanding of America's challenges, America's energy challenges, are essential to making wise decisions about the future. And we believe the Department of Energy and the Energy Information Administration have a critical role to play in providing America with that reliable information. Unfortunately, we are looking at some of their projections for future oil and gas supply, and we find them to be grossly misleading and perhaps just inaccurate about what is really happening in the world in terms of oil and gas supply. Now, ASPO-USA is an organization with a long list of experts and energy researchers, academicians, people from industry, outside industry, some of whom are represented here today, and many of whom have signed a letter to Secretary Chu that is outlining our specific concerns, actually specific questions that we have for the Secretary that we're asking for his response to. And we will look forward to his response and to working with the Secretary and the Department to see if we can't do a better job of understanding and confronting the challenges relating to oil and gas supply and energy overall. It's essential for our economy, it's essential for our national security, and we look forward to working with the Secretary. I'd like to introduce our president and co-founder, Jim Balfauf, who's going to talk a little bit more about ASPO-USA, our history, and how we got to be here today. And after Jim, we will have Dr. Robert Hirsch, author of a 2005 report for the Department of Energy that examined what the implications of these oil and gas supply constraints are. Following Dr. Hirsch will be Arthur Berman, independent consulting petroleum geologist for Labyrinth Consulting Services, who's going to talk about the role of the North American and U.S. oil and gas resources and where they factor into the future. Following Arthur will be Tom Whipple, former CIA analyst and now chief editor for Peak Oil Review, which is one of ASPO-USA's flagship publications. And then we'll present the letter to Secretary Chu. So I'd like to introduce Jim Balfauf, ASPO-USA president and co-founder.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you, folks. We founded ASPO-USA in 2005 to monitor data-based trends in oil and gas production that we found very alarming. We were especially concerned that many mainstream organizations were ignoring or dismissing these same trends that we found to be alarming. It's one thing for industry or the Chamber of Commerce to put out rosy projections about oil and gas. It's good for stock prices and for Wall Street. But EIA is a taxpayer-funded public agency that is dedicated to independence and to truth. And our organization is all about truth in energy. We cannot let our future be wagered on another bubble and another financial bailout. Lehman Brothers, AIG, Enron are all behind us. Let's make sure that we don't have the oil patch equivalent of another scandal. We're not running out of oil, but we are running out of oil that we can afford and easily extract. Drilling for oil in extreme deep weather, strip mining for oil in Canadian tar sands, squeezing oil from shale source rock All of these unconventional sources of oil mean that we're scraping at the bottom of the barrel. Natural gas and oil from shale will not solve our energy and oil problems. Unconventional oil and gas sources are called unconventional because they are. They're so unconventional, so expensive, and so energy intensive that they really won't solve our problems. Furthermore, the risk-benefit ratio is way out of balance. If these rosy predictions, if these exuberant predictions are wrong, the consequences could be catastrophic for the United States. We need to be conservative about planning for the future. We can't bet America's economy and national security on Pollyanna predictions. Exuberance about cheap energy may serve the short-term interest of Wall Street, but it threatens the future of our country. Thank you. I'd like to now introduce Dr. Robert Hirsch, author of the famous Hirsch report and a more recent book concerning our energy mess. Bob?
Thank you, Jim. Just a few words. Despite rising demand and a large increase in oil prices, world oil supply has been on a plateau. It's been relatively flat since about 2005, and that's indicated here. In the past, oil production in the world has increased as economies have grown and needed oil. The Department of Energy and the Energy Information Administration have not focused on this particular issue, which is a large change in the history of oil production in the world. We believe, a number of us that have studied this problem feel that in a relatively few years, world oil production will go into decline, and when that happens, it is going to drag down world economies everywhere. The decline rate that we talk about for world oil production is a matter of 4 or 5%, which may not sound large, but when one considers the amount of oil that's used worldwide, that's a huge amount to make up either with unconventional oil or energy efficiency. So once the decline occurs, we're going to have a very hard time. All of us are going to have a hard time catching up with something that's basically running away from us. The Department of Energy should have seen this kind of thing coming and should be able to provide us with an adequate explanation of what this is and what it means, but it hasn't done that. On the other hand, the Department of Defense, in their Joint Operations Environment Report, which has come out in both 2008 and 2010, has told us that world oil production is going to go into decline probably in 2012. After that, they see a significant decline, so that at 2015 there will be something like 10 million barrels a day less oil available, and that will be a significant problem for our economy and other economies around the world. The Energy Information Administration differs with the Department of Defense. We feel that the Department of Defense, in fact, has been realistic in their forecasts, and the Energy Information Administration, which has rosy forecasts for oil production, in fact, is in error. We think that the United States government, on such an important issue, ought to speak with one voice, and yet they have not done that. We call on the Department of Energy and EIA to reconcile with the Department of Defense and to give us a straight story, which we believe is much closer to what the Department of Defense has been forecasting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bob. I'd like to introduce Arthur Berman, petroleum geologist for Labyrinth Consulting Services.
Thank you, Jan. I've worked in the oil and gas business as a geologist for more than 33 years. I daily study the worldwide and national supply of oil and gas, and I'd like to specifically address the recent exuberance that we hear on television and in the press regarding unconventional oil and gas supply in the United States. It is quite encouraging that U.S. oil production has increased in the last couple of years. It was on a steady decline, and it has increased a bit. To be specific, it's increased about 625,000 barrels a day. But that's still less than what we were producing at in 2002, and it's almost half of levels that the country was producing in 1970. So while this is a positive development that we've found additional sources of oil, it's important to note that this represents approximately 3.5% of U.S. daily consumption. So it's just not enough to really make a difference. Most of this increased oil production is from shales in the Bakken, in Montana and North Dakota, and in the Eagle Ford Shale in South Texas, and a few other shale plays. We've known about these sources of oil for a long time, and it's only since the price of oil has increased above $80 a barrel that it's commercial to extract these volumes. Much of it is not commercial even at present rates because of very high drilling and completion costs. The reserves and the future oil supply from these formations is unknown. The reason it's unknown is because we've only been producing for a very short amount of time. We don't know what the decline rates will be, and we don't know exactly what the commercial volumes need to be. Natural gas is all over the news today. It's true that gas from shale has made a significant impact on our energy supply in recent years, and we are enthusiastic along with the press and others about this. Having said that, we have the same uncertainty for medium and long-term reserves that I just mentioned about oil. We simply do not know what the longevity of these wells will be. We hear often that we have 100 years of natural gas as a result of the shale gas revolution. Unfortunately, the math of these industry claims simply does not compute. That when we take competent, publicly available estimates of resources and reserves, we come up with perhaps 25 years of supply, which is good. Certainly better than we had a few years ago, but it's a far cry from 100 years of natural gas. And the final point I want to make are the claims that natural gas will solve our energy problems. We cannot, at the moment, use natural gas for transportation. Transportation is the primary use of crude oil and refined products. We may be able to make this adjustment. It's going to take decades, if not generations, to make this equipment change. And so in summary, my professional opinion as a worker and consultant in the oil and gas business is that it's wonderful that we found additional supplies of both oil and gas in the United States. When I look at the volumes of oil, I don't see enough to make a difference. When I look at the volumes of gas, it certainly does make a difference for the short term, but we don't know the long-term picture, and we certainly can't use natural gas to solve all of our energy problems. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Arthur. So while North American resources are abundant and an opportunity, we need to be careful about how much faith we put into that, all our eggs in that basket. So I'd like to introduce now Tom Whipple, longtime CIA analyst and now chief editor for Peak Oil Review, our flagship publication. He's going to talk about this from a national security and intelligence perspective and where the issue is going from there.
Thank you. During a career at the Central Intelligence Agency, I came to appreciate the many diverse threats to the well-being of our country. These threats not only come from foreign countries and terrorist groups, they also come from a changing economic and environmental factors. 10 years ago, I became concerned about the threat to our well-being from depleting oil reserves, which is vital to the functioning of our society. For the last 6 years, I have been the publications editor for the Association for the Study of Peak Oil, and in this capacity have become familiar with nearly every piece of information and analysis bearing on the issue of peaking oil production. There are literally dozens of reports and analyses appearing every week around the world that point to the fact that the world is facing major challenges in simply maintaining, much less growing, the supply of oil in the next few years. Our concern here today is the growing disconnect between the solid evidence of serious troubles ahead and the Department of Energy's benign projections concerning the availability of fossil fuels in the next 30 years. As a longtime federal employee, I know there are many good, smart analysts and modelers working for the Department of Energy who fully understand the nature of what will happen to us when the fossil fuels becomes into such short supply that is no longer affordable. I also understand the nature of life inside an organization as large as the U.S. government and even the Department of Energy, where one is subject to numerous political pressures from incumbent administrations in Congress. By their very nature, large and venerable organizations become subject to bureaucratic inertia, wherein there is great reluctance to change long-standing assumptions and projections, especially when these changes will inevitably lead to controversy. We are therefore calling on the leadership of the Department of Energy and the Energy Information Agency Administration to unleash the analytical resources and expertise of these organizations to understand and address the increasingly uncertain future of our oil and gas supplies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom. And so you've heard from a number of experts with a long history, decades of experience in the industry. You've heard the voice of independence, and that's really what we are seeking from the Department of Energy and the EIA, freedom and independence to pursue this issue with the seriousness that it deserves. So we are presenting a letter to Secretary Chu outlining specific issues and questions that we have that we'd like to address with him. We are also proposing the need and that DOE should be involved in developing a national oil emergency response plan that will address both the near-term risks of an oil supply crisis as well as the consequences of long-term oil shortages. So I'd like to present this letter and as well as a copy of Bob's book to a representative of the Secretary here. Thank you very much for being here today. And we look forward to following up with the Secretary at his earliest convenience.
It was nice meeting you.
Thank you. And I'll just add, and we've included this in the letter, that the Association for the Study of Peak Oil and Gas USA, ASPO-USA, next week we'll be having our conference here in Washington, D.C. Experts from across the country and around the world will be gathering here to focus on this issue and seek truth and energy. And we invited the Secretary and his staff to join us if they were able, and we look forward to hosting them if that's possible. That concludes our news conference for today. All of our experts, as well as all the signatories for the letter, will be available for comment, and we'll be happy to send you any additional information. Thank you all very much.